Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Navigate Your Divine Meltdown. Become an everyday mystic by embracing your brokenness and awakening to your vibrant human holiness. My name is Stephen Dinan, and I am blessed and honored to be with you here today, getting to explore really something that is at the heart of the Shift Network, which is all about spiritual awakening, not in a sense of transcending this world, but to our full humanity, to see the divinity in all dimensions of ourself and really become a mystic who has practical implications for the world to help heal the brokenness of the world. And we're going to be exploring this really important subject of how do we sort of go through this alchemical transmutation process into our divinely human self with, I think, one of the world pioneers of the perspectives necessary for this. Her name is Mirabai Starr. She is one of our favorite Shift faculty members. She's an interspiritual author, speaker, retreat leader, and translator of many mystics from multiple different traditions. So she's done an amazing job of harvesting the mystical wisdom from the world, particularly female mystics, and translating that for our everyday lives. So Mirabai, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, I always find it such a joy to be with you, Stephen, and with this community that feels so much like home.
It is such a beautiful community. So, and you've helped create it. So I want to mention right up front, we are going to have this time with Mirabai today. We're going to dive deep together. And if you want to go further, we're going to have a brand new program for you that is going to dive into the Divine Meltdown. So we'll share a bit more about that towards the end of the hour. So Mirabai, why don't we start today with a little bit about your journey, because you definitely have been initiated by the fires of life and had to go through quite a number of divine meltdowns to birth a lot of the work that you are birthing now. So maybe share a little bit about your perspective around why this concept of a divine meltdown is actually really important for all of us to understand and embrace about the spiritual path as we walk it now in a modern era.
I know, Stephen, that so many people listening to this right now can relate to this very alive connection between the structures and systems in society and the world collapsing right now, and that process kind of being mirrored in many of our individual lives, our lives as just individual people, but also in our families and in our communities. So we're seeing this kind of macrocosm, microcosm collapsing phenomenon right now. And so we're looking for ways to apply the spiritual awakening that we've cultivated by virtue of our various spiritual practices, of our paths, to the way that we see the world situation, but also the way we activate and try to be of service in this world as things are falling apart everywhere we look. But they might also be falling apart in our own lives, right? So how do we muster the resources in ourselves to step up right now in these times when we also may be falling apart? And so what I'm noticing and appreciating is that when I enter into the reality of my life, whatever I might be going through, and instead of trying to fix it, like looking at it as some kind of broken thing that I need to find a solution for, or instead of trying to transcend it, which is what many of our spiritual traditions have taught us to do, because they are patriarchal traditions. Even the seemingly most alternative ones have mostly been created long ago by and for male people, men. And so we have this idea of perfectionism and purification and all of those things that are not working right now. What is working is actually embracing the reality of our lives, our ordinary everyday lives, as being sacred ground, and that everything we need to do and be and offer in this world is available, not despite the turmoil and changes and difficulties of our lives, but actually that's the garden from which we harvest the fruits that we need to nourish ourselves and feed the world.
So poetically shared, it kind of brings to mind, I think it's from the Alcoholics Anonymous tradition, the only way out is through, that it's like it's through the sort of the raw, intense, transformative fires sometimes that is what really births us into our freest self. And I know that's been true in your life, and I don't know if there's anything you want to share about some of what you've had to go through and what it birthed in you.
Thank you, Stephen. Well, okay, so I have a little cough right now. Why? Because I had COVID, like so many of you. And I will mention that was this confluence. In fact, I spoke with Deva, your beloved, at the time. So I don't know, about 4 weeks ago, I was preparing to go to France to teach at Chartres Cathedral with Lauren Artress, with the Labyrinth, the person who founded the whole Labyrinth movement. Very excited. We'd been working on it for a year. Got sick. Thought I could beat the window, and still get on a plane 5 days later. It wasn't possible. I got sicker and sicker. And at my most ill, when I was trying to figure out what to do about the France thing and realizing I probably couldn't go, my mother's partner of 25 years, her beloved, died. Like the fifth day of my COVID, when I was very, very sick. For some reason, I had a very long, drawn out, intense version of this illness. Maybe it was the fourth day. And my whole family was around his hospital bed, being with him. And I was there on FaceTime, and I was chanting to him. He was a practitioner of Tibetan Buddhism, so I was doing the Tara chant to him as he was dying. It was very intense. So I was hardly sleeping. I was sick. The next day, literally 24 hours later, 6 in the morning, I finally was sleeping. I get a call that my beloved stepfather, my mother's previous partner of 22 years, who co-raised us, had also died in Mexico. And I, being the most bilingual, the most fluent in Spanish of all of us, had to deal with all of the, the police and the body and the cremation, all of that. And trying to figure out the France thing. But the most important thing there, the most painful part of that whole process, besides the fact that I loved both of these men dearly, I was in daily contact with both of them. That's how close they were to me. But the worst part is I couldn't be with my mother because I had COVID. So I was separated from her at a time when she needed me most, and I most needed to be with her. And so all of these things were just piling up. And what I realized, we had these horrible fires in New Mexico, just raging. The biggest fire in the history of New Mexico had been raging for a month. And now it was pouring rain, pouring like Seattle, all day, every day. And it was dark. It was like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening every day in the winter, and all of this erosion was happening. So our beloved land was being pummeled by these torrential rains that on top of the wildfires were creating enormous damage to this land that we love here in the mountains of northern New Mexico. Okay, so you got the picture? So I realized from all the mystics that I know and love and have studied that what I was experiencing on this kind of microcosmic level was a mirror of what was happening in the world. And that my own personal experiences connected me with the heart of the human experience and of what's happening to our mother, the earth. And that realization, that really did come from years and years of studying the mystics across the spiritual traditions and practicing in multiple spiritual traditions, enabled me to take a breath and recognize my connectedness with all that is. With the whole of the human family, with our mother, the earth. And that realization enabled me to kind of show up in such a way that I could make of my personal experience an offering of love to the world. And that transformed everything for me. I feel like a new person by virtue of what I went through 4 weeks ago. That was anchored in the mystical path that I've been on really my whole life.
Wow, what an intense initiation, and wow, that you'd had so much to draw upon in terms of seeing a pathway through where you become a love offering as a result, rather than just turning into the victim of the circumstances. It kind of cracked you open to another level of service as well. So What a beautiful example for us. And so you mentioned drawing upon sort of historical mystics for sort of sustenance and strength. I wonder if you can share a little bit about that as a practice, since you really, that has been a key part of what you brought forward to the world, is a deep understanding of some of the mystical pioneers of the world and how we can learn from them.
Yeah, that's funny. I really drew on my allies. I call them my allies, my buddies, my companions on the path, which are these long dead mystics across the spiritual traditions. And I can name a couple, and you'll see what I mean. But the first thing I want to say is in response to what you said about rather than collapsing into victimhood or something like that. And I want to say that to me, the path of the ordinary mystic includes everything. And that means sometimes we're going to feel sorry for ourselves. I mean, I spent a good 48 hours really feeling sad about my my plight in this world, and that's fine. So I just want everyone to know that yes, these mystical teachings and this orientation to walk through this world as a mystic, meaning someone who's simply awake to a direct experience of love, includes our full humanity. And so sometimes we're going to get pissed off. We're going to say things we don't mean. We're going to have our little tantrums. It's part of being a human. And the patriarchy has conditioned us to judge ourselves as not being spiritual when those things happen. So just a reminder that all of the mystics I love, had their beautiful humanity entwined with their spiritual mastery. Like Teresa of Avila, who so many of you know is kind of my girl. I've translated her, I've taught her, I love her. She's she's a true ancestor, a living ancestor in my life. And she was known for being petulant, petty, wanting people to love her and like her, and railing against the things that didn't go her way. Saint Francis of Assisi famously climbed up on the roof of a church that was being built in his name when he was so dedicated, Francis of Assisi, to voluntary simplicity. And in his own lifetime, the church kind of stole his entire movement because it was so popular, and they realized they could get money if they used it, and started building these massive churches in his very lifetime. And he was so angry, climbed up on the church and was pulling off tiles and throwing them on the ground and smashing them. Moses, the prophet Moses, went up to the mountain and received the 10 Commandments on these stone tablets. When he came down and saw the Israelites worshiping the golden calf because they couldn't wait 5 minutes for him to go up and have his encounter with the Holy One and receive the Torah, they had to immediately go back to the old ways. And he got so mad he threw down the tablets and they shattered. Mirabai, my namesake, suffered terribly in her lifetime. She had an arranged marriage, as so many Indian women did and still do. Mirabai was a 16th century Bhakti poet, devotional poet in India. And she was married to a prince. There were many kind of petty kingdoms in India at the time. And much older than herself, she had no feelings for this guy at all, but she was already madly in love with Krishna, the god of love. And so when she was forced into this arranged marriage, she said, I can't consummate this marriage. I'm already married to Krishna, with whom I am madly in love. And her in-laws tried to kill her. 3 different kind of there are these legends about the ways they tried to kill her, with poisoned snakes wrapped into garlands and nectar that was laced with I don't know, arsenic or something. And so she was persecuted. And Rabia, the 8th century Sufi mystic, was an enslaved woman. The only time she had to pray was at night after all her work was finished. And praying all night, she had a complete awakening. And it was, in fact, her awakening that earned her freedom, because the man who owned her heard her praying one night on the rooftop. And he climbed the ladder to see what the sound was, because there was this wailing emanating from the roof of his home. Allah, Allah, she was crying out to God. And when he went up to see what was going on, there were flames leaping from her head, and he recognized her as an awakened master and freed her. So all of the mystics that I know and love, Hildegard had migraines. Hildegard of Bingen, the 12th century Rhineland visionary, the mystic of the earth, really, Hildegard with Viriditas, the greening power of God. And then finally, these are just all off the top of my head, I would say Julian of Norwich, the 13th century English mystic, had a near-death experience, and in that experience, Christ revealed himself as herself, as Christ the Mother, and taught her all of these beautiful teachings of unconditional love. So I draw on all of these mystics on a regular basis, depending on what I'm going through. They're my ancestors, they're my allies, they're my siblings, they're my beloveds. And all these years of cultivating relationship with them has made them really alive and accessible to me. This is something I try to share with the people who work with me, who study with me.
You know, what I'm struck by in the way you talk about them is that you have a beautiful way of honoring their blessings and their gifts without putting them on a pedestal above, like that you talk about a sibling or, you know, it's like an ally, there's a way in which it's like you're kind of avoiding that tendency to sort of like put some sort of perfection on a pedestal and then demean ourselves relationship to it, because part of it seems like your core message is it's like they were fully human too, and let's celebrate that, let's focus on that, and it makes it's actually a better message to ourselves.
I think so. And again, if you don't mind my using that word, the P word, patriarchy, I really do feel that all of these beautiful, gorgeous, rich spiritual traditions, the major ones that we know, Hinduism, Buddhism, the Judeo-Christian traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all of them have such beautiful treasures at their heart, especially at the mystical heart of each of those traditions. But they've also been deeply conditioned by these patriarchal messages that we have to be pure, we have to be perfect. This is language that is used throughout all of those traditions I named. And we have to see that all of this world is an illusion, and behind the veil of illusion of this world is a more real world. And if we can just vigorously, rigorously cultivate our spiritual lives, then we will be worthy of having access to that real world beyond this one. I do believe that the perspective we have here in this world is a relative one, and that there is a much larger picture. I'm not denying that, but neither am I denying that this very world, this brief fleeting incarnation that we have, is an opportunity to wake up to the fullness of our inherent connection with the divine. And from that realization of our unitive birthright, right here in this world, in this body, in these relationships, in these fractured times, we can find right in the middle of that peace that everybody I know is longing for, which is, what is mine to do and be and offer in this broken world right now? You know, Jewish mystical wisdom says that when we're born, it's imprinted on our souls exactly what is ours to do to mend the broken world. That mending is called tikkun olam in Hebrew, and it's usually hidden in plain sight. But we're so conditioned to think it's supposed to look like something else, something holier, something more, less neurotic and more polished, and more checked out and aloof or something, that we miss it. And I just want to suggest that what it is for us each to do is not only hidden in plain sight, but is already something we love. That's the feminine, It's connected to our sensuality, to our full humanity, something that brings us aliveness and joy. Doesn't have to hurt to be of service. In fact, that's a sure way to burn out.
You speak in such poetic terms. It's very beautiful. And so let's really focus now on the ourselves and how, if we are going through a breakdown or a challenge or a meltdown, or that there's some sense of like being challenged beyond our limits, like how do you turn that into a practice so that you are seeing that as an opportunity to love and mend and heal and reclaim more parts of ourselves so that we aren't subtly dissociating in this kind of more patriarchal way?
Beautiful. Well, one of the things that's always worked for me is writing. Writing is a spiritual practice for me. It's not, I'm not writing essays for publication. When I do writing practice, what I'm doing is I am connecting with my deeper mind that lies below the surface level of busy, frenetic thoughts that often enter when I'm distraught. Then that's when my mind goes into overdrive, like probably most of you. That's why they called it the monkey mind in the East, in Hinduism and Buddhism. So one of the things that I do is I turn inward. I take a few deep breaths to regulate my nervous system. Well, let's do it, friends. And if you have paper and pen handy or an electronic device you can write on, that would be great, because I'll lead you in a quick writing practice. So what I do first is I take 3 deep breaths to regulate, to find balance. Inhaling deeply, holding the in-breath, and then exhaling completely and making my exhalation a bit longer than my inhalation. 3 times at my own pace. That's what I invite you to do first as a centering. I'll take a minute while you breathe. And then what I do is I identify one thing, not 11 things that are all stirring around in my mind. I try to focus on one thing that's really burdening my heart and mind. One thing that's troubling my mind most. So in my case, with that whole sequence I gave you, it was not being able to be with my mom, who I love so much. So, but there was nothing I could do about it because I had COVID, right? So what I do then, after I've identified that one thing by turning inward and allowing myself to settle and seeing what rises, I write it down. And I give myself 5 minutes. I'm not going to give you 5 minutes. I'm going to give you a minute or two right now to write down that thing that is most troubling your mind or burdening your heart. So take a moment. And I'm right here with you as you let it out. Don't censor it. And then I symbolically place that worry or that guilt or that concern or that anxiety or fear or distress, remorse perhaps, even lamentation. I place it at the feet of the Mother. And you can picture the divine feminine in any form that speaks to you. But picture an unconditionally loving feminine being who absolutely adores you exactly as you are. Not, I love you anyway, in spite of your faults. No, I love you unconditionally, absolutely, and I am 100% here right now. So you lay your burden at her feet. Offer it to her. Give it to her. In the Hindu tradition, which I grew up with, at least from my early teens onward, we do a Kali fire. But I'm so concerned about cultural appropriation right now, I don't know about you, that I don't want to just blithely teach you in 3 minutes what a Kali fire is. If you ever have the opportunity to, maybe you already have, to be part of such a beautiful ritual, it's an incredibly powerful way to offer up things that are obstacles on your path to fullness, to aliveness, to embracing your whole humanity. But for now, we're just offering it in our minds at the feet of the Mother. And as you do so, I'm going to ring a bell 3 times. And with each bell, I'm going to say the Sanskrit word swaha, which you can see as so be it, may it be so. That you're letting it go, but you're giving it to the Mother, who will transmute it into the most delicious humus for growth, for the whole world. Okay. Swaha. Swaha. Swaha.
Thank you for that. And there's something so powerful about that transmuting. It's not getting rid of anything. You're just changing the form of it, so it's more liberated.
Yes, and then it's available for everyone. It nourishes everyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something about it's like this perspective that you're offering, the more of the feminine embrace of the unconditional love of everything. It's more alchemical and transcendent, where it's like you're just helping things to recohere without actually without actually rejecting anything. It's really beautiful.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. That's right. That's it.
So I'd love you to share a little bit of insight of how to turn this perspective into practices that really are fully honoring of all of ourselves.
So the writing practice is something that you can do on a regular basis, and you can give yourself prompts and then time yourself. I find 10 minutes is a really powerful amount of time to drop down through the layers of surface thoughts and get to what they call in Zen original mind. And so what I do is I keep on my phone, I keep in the notes a list of prompts to give myself for writing practice. And I do this about once a week, probably. It's just kind of a spiritual house cleaning, and I write for 10 minutes, and then I have a felt sense of some kind of transmutation happening. I have a daily contemplative practice that is definitely an age-old silent sitting practice. I sit for around 15 minutes most mornings. It's not a long time. Again, we're conditioned to think that if you don't sit for an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening in the Zen tradition or the Vipassana tradition, then you are not doing the work. So sometimes less is more. And when you have a busy life and you're involved with parenting and working and community and all of the things that we deal with in everyday life as ordinary people who are not monks, who are not monastics, who don't have the luxury of long spiritual practice, you can actually, through conscious breathing and allowing yourself to simply be, you can achieve or attain those moments of lucidity, that the mystics speak about, where we can cultivate a kind of openness to wonder. Like, that's what it means to be an everyday mystic, is to be open to radical amazement and wonderment in the most ordinary moments of our lives. But unless we slow down and allow ourselves to become still enough, we are not necessarily available to the breaking through of grace that can happen in any given moment. So a simple silent sitting practice rooted in taking some deep conscious breaths in the beginning really help. Another thing for me that's essential to my spiritual path is being in nature every day. Now, I know some of you live in cities, but most cities have parks and other green spaces. Even if it's opening the window and just feeling the air on your face for a moment. Some of us are not mobile because of illness or injury or other disabilities that we can't actually take walks. And so what's the way that you can connect, even just through your awareness of your rootedness in Mother Earth, the roots that extend from your base chakra, or the base of your spine and the soles of your feet, deep into the belly of our mother, and intertwine with her luminous root system. So being in nature, connecting with nature every day. And I live in the mountains, as I said, in northern New Mexico, and it gets very snowy here. But there's no weather that keeps me from being outside at least for a few minutes every day, and preferably longer. And I often feel like I can't afford that practice because I'm so damn busy, like the rest of you, maybe. But I can't afford not to anymore. Which leads me to the next practice that has become vital for me as an ordinary everyday mystic like you. And that is a Sabbath practice, a weekly practice of unplugging and disengaging from the compulsions that drive me all the rest of the week. I call it the list written in fluorescent ink. You know, that list that has all of these emergencies, everything becomes an emergency. I let that list go entirely on Shabbat in the Jewish tradition, but you can use the Sabbath practice to fit the shape of your life. I use it in the kind of traditional Jewish way of lighting the candles on Friday night, welcoming the Sabbath, who is feminine, by the way. In the Jewish tradition, the Sabbath is the bride, the Shekhinah, and allowing myself to drop into that ordinary sacred space for that 24-hour period, not checking emails, not responding to electronic messages. That all goes away on Shabbat. Oh, I wake up Saturday mornings and I get very excited that I have a full day ahead of me without being burdened by those compulsions such as electronic. It's an addiction for me, and I think it is for many of us. So it's a way of releasing myself from my addictions, really, and lightening my footprint on Mother Earth. So Sabbath practice is vital.
I love the way you describe that, and it inspires me to recommit to that. I've done that off and on. It's been harder with young children, but it is so nourishing to do that.
Kids love it, by the way. Children love
Yeah.
it. I always did it with my children. It just became part of our weekly ritual.
Well, that's a good inspiration. So great. Well, thank you for that. I want to also just circle back with this whole notion of some of the parts of ourselves that we judge and that we reject, and our misperceptions, or so subtly kind of have resistance to. I mean, you've offered some really great practices around writing, and anything else you want to share just around the more psychological process of seeing and embracing the deeper purpose, really, and value and the beauty of parts of ourselves that we may not feel as comfortable with.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Stephen. It's the heart of everything I'm trying to share right now about reclaiming the landscape of our lives, ravaged though they may be, as holy ground. So when we have one of those self-judging thoughts like, I shouldn't have been irritable with my aging mom, or I should be more peaceful when I'm confronted with something not going my way, rather than being feeling thrown off balance, or that if I think somebody is upset with me, then I feel bad and I obsessively think about it. All of those natural kind of psychological responses to the world, to everyday experience, being a human being, right in the heart of those very experiences is a kind of tenderness. If we turn toward them rather than away from them for one moment, like a mother leaning in to listen to her child who's upset about something or hurt, then with that very tenderness toward ourselves becomes a refuge, a space where we can take refuge, and it opens up a constricted moment into a much more generous and generative field. Like, here I am having a human experience. I mean, I've done this kind of offering myself refuge for long enough, connecting myself to the Great Mother, who I feel is the one giving me that refuge, for long enough that now, when I have a moment that feels neurotic or off balance, I can usually pretty quickly have a nice little chuckle and realize, there you are, Mirabai, you are having a human experience. Or if I start judging someone, that's one of my favorites, judging someone as being less spiritual, less awake, more consumerist or capitalist, or whatever my judgments are, I'm able to soften around those judgments and listen to what that moment might have to teach me and tell me, and what it might be able to show me as a way to be of service in this world. I mean, I have very strong opinions. How about you? About what's going on in the world right now? The climate collapse, the rising authoritarianism, the way in which women's sovereignty over their own bodies is at risk as it hasn't been in a generation at least. And I'm very concerned about what's going on in the world, and I'm actively engaged in doing what I can to speak out against injustice. But it begins with this willingness to not think that I'm the one who has it all figured out, which is a very patriarchal conditioning that I, too, as a woman, have inherited, almost as much as the men in my life have inherited it. But I try to breathe into the moment, connect with the Great Mother, and give myself a break for having a human experience, and then listen, look around, and pay attention to the very moment that I'm in and what it has to teach me about being a kinder, more awake, more available human. And sometimes that means I need to take a break. I need to take a rest. I need to take a walk. I need to eat some chocolate, take a nap. I don't know. Something that is soothing and nurturing so that I can refill my cup and be a cup that I can offer to others.
Well, I just love your depth of your self-honesty and self-compassion, and even just, both standing up for what you feel you want to see in the world, and then inquiring into what it is that you need to metabolize in terms of judgment or resistance in yourself. It's really noble and beautiful and very human. So I really feel so nourished by your perspective. And I know that this really is at the heart of how we all become everyday mystics. How do we become more enlightened change agents? By embracing all of who we are, and you're just embodying that so beautifully. So I want to spend some time talking about...
So many
Yes.
people are, Stephen. I am not unusual. That I get to do this right now, and I feel very blessed because I'm passionate about this subject. But I'm looking around me, and so many of you are singing this song too and resonating with it. So there's nothing special about what I'm saying here, but I am saying it with as much clarity and passion and decades of on the path and lots of mistakes behind me.
Mm. Well, you clearly embrace being a sibling to others in a beautiful way in that sense, and it's a great teaching to do so. So let's talk a little bit about your upcoming program, because I know that this is going to be such a blessing and gift for all who choose to join you. It's really clear, as you can just hear in this hour, that Mirabai she always shares right up to her own growing edge, her own vulnerability. She's not putting herself on a pedestal and just, sermonizing from the mount. She's really working through the kinks and just challenges and real hardships of being human and walking a mystical path in an often broken world. And so she's created this program with us called the Divine Meltdown Course. Become an everyday mystic and reclaim your life as holy ground for deeper connection to the sacred. So in many ways, this is a distillate of her whole life's journey. We've only heard a slice of it. She's had the loss of a daughter. She's had so many losses that she's had to navigate, and really come out with the fruits of that, of a deeply surrendered life, a life that's really given in divine service. And so you can find the program laid out in detail at divinemeltdowncourse.com, divinemeltdowncourse.com. There are no prerequisites for this program. It's 7 weeks, a journey really into your holy humanness, into your brokenness and your divinity at the same time, and to really do so with a companion and guide and inspiration from so many others who have walked this path before you. So Mirabai, I'd love for you to share in your own words what you're excited to bring forward in this program, and maybe why this is an important offering at this moment collectively. And then I'll read out the module titles. You give us a preview of what each is going to contain.
Thank you, Stephen. Well, the title was a group process with myself and the shift team. I think, Stephen, you maybe ultimately are the one who pulled it out. So I often say, when you're having a spiritual meltdown, melt. Like, that's my motto, I think. If you're having a spiritual meltdown, melt. Because it is in that melting, in that letting go, in that releasing ourselves into the arms of radical unknowingness, which is at the heart of the mystical teachings across the spectrum of faith traditions. That unknowing is really the heart of mystical awakening, allowing ourselves to not know. And so when we're having one of those periods where nothing makes sense, where the world around us is collapsing and our own lives are on fire, I am inviting us to actually inhabit the warmth of that fire and allow all of our preconceptions about what the spiritual life is supposed to be to just dissolve into that kind of boundless ocean of love, which is what the mystical journey is about. It's about merging. It's about what Julian of Norwich called wanting. And what are we wanting with? We're wanting with love. And the only way we can do that is by allowing the edges that we identified with that keep us separate to just warm like butter in the sun. So that's the divine meltdown. And yes, grief and loss is, I'm sorry to say, kind of at the center of this process, because we can do spiritual practices rigorously day and night for 30 years. But when someone we love very much dies, or someone with whom we were in relationship, with whom we thought we were going to grow old together, decides they love someone else more and leaves, or we're given a serious health diagnosis, or the job and the career that we built our whole identity around is taken from us and we're let go, or all of the things, and the money that goes with it. There are so many ways that we experience loss, not just the death of a loved one, that invite us in a single moment to that vital spiritual station of surrender that all the spiritual practices are designed to bring us to. And what we are invited to do is to fully be with it, not as a white-knuckled response of I can do it, I can be present for this unbearable anguish, but as an offering of love, of surrender. I will show up for what is, because it's the most loving thing I can think of to do right now, is be present for exactly what's unfolding. So that's kind of where the title came from. And we have all those moments in our everyday lives where we are invited, not always through grief and loss, but sometimes. But we're invited into a more vital, vibrant, alive, fully present connection with the miracle of love that is available to us everywhere, always.
Love it. Like butter in the sun. I love that. Module 1, discover your bold, sensual self by courageously expressing the mystic you already are.
This is about setting your intention. I think that's kind of the first part of walking as an everyday mystic in this world, is setting our intention. I am going to walk this path. I am dedicating myself to being available for the grace that comes with being a contemplative, being a mystic, being open to the presence of the divine.
Module 2, cultivate a presence for deeper connection to the sacred.
This is about paying attention. I call it cultivating a fearless gaze, so that wherever you are, whatever is going on, you remember to look, to listen, to be on alert for the presence of the sacred in everything. And sometimes that means that we have to literally physically look around. I was taking a walk this morning. I'm in the middle of negotiating a book contract. I have a lot on my little mind, and I was totally gone. I was walking in the most beautiful landscape, the smell of sagebrush emanating, the chickadees just exploding in birdsong, and I wasn't there. Have you ever been there where you're not there? So I just remembered, like, be right here, pay attention. And the wonderment of the world just opened to me again. It's always there, but we have to remind ourselves to pay attention.
Module 3, gain a renewed sense of amazement through radical surrender.
So much of it is about not trying to control the world. This is why Shabbat practice is so handy. Abraham Joshua Heschel, the great 20th century Jewish philosopher and activist, said that Shabbat is like building a temple in time and then entering it, and it gives us a break from wielding our power in trying to control the world and reminds us that we belong to the world. So that's what that's about. And then we can be what he called radically amazed at every turn.
Beautiful quote. Module 4, learn love at the feet of the masters to activate love in your daily life.
Oh, yes. So there are so many who have walked before us and are walking around us right now who have great wisdom and beauty to bring. So reading the sacred texts of all the world's religions is a beautiful way to harvest some of that ever-living wisdom of the mystics. Music, contemporary music, classical music. There are so many ways that people are making music and opening us. That the music becomes a portal to mystical awareness. Making music, if you're a music maker, you know this. If you're an artist of any kind, if you can re-engage with even the childlike play that maybe originally informed your love of the arts, this is a wondrous way to access that unitive state that the mystics speak about. But reading, listening, making art, these are all the ways that we can reawaken to the other voices also that have spoken this song of love, sung the song of love.
Module 5, build and tend beloved community to support your sacred transformation.
Yeah, this is no secret. Thich Nhat Hanh of blessed memory said the next Buddha will be the Sangha. So in Buddhism, the three jewels are taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The teacher, the teachings, and the community of practitioners. And the third one is the most important one, the Buddha said. Beloved community, and Dr. Martin Luther King said, is everything. We can only do this together. The time of the lone prophet charging forth on his white horse is over. We have to and get to do it together in community.
Module 6, use the pain of grief to open yourself to inner peace.
Yeah, I think we talked about this already, that the patriarchy has disparaged feelings, emotions, embodied experience. We are reclaiming those things that are often considered to be feminine attributes, but again, these are energies that live in all beings, masculine and feminine energies, but we're reclaiming those more feminine attributes or qualities of sacred desire, feeling, emotion, and embodied experience. This is holy ground.
And finally, Module 7, embrace your humanity as a way to express the sacred.
This is the integration. This is taking all of the experiences that we've had, say experiences of grief and loss, and then learning to walk through the world in a new way. Many people use the analogy of a butterfly, right? That the caterpillar must dissolve completely in the cocoon. And science has shown us that it becomes literally a dissolved puddle of imaginal cells. But even Teresa of Avila in the 16th century was talking about how the little homely white worm, she called it, had to die to emerge as the beautiful butterfly. Well, actually, she was talking about a silkworm and the moth, the white moth that emerges. But what we also know is that when the butterfly is first emerges from the cocoon, is reborn, it's awkward. It's like stumbling around, like, what are these things on my back? Before it can lift off and soar, it needs to readjust to this new reality. If we are crucified on a regular basis by life and resurrected, it's not a quick process. There is an integration that needs to happen. Like, who am I now? Who is this newly integrated, emerged butterfly me? And so we consciously work with integrating our newly awakened mystical gaze.
Well, what a beautiful offering, and this couldn't be more perfect for the moment we're traversing collectively as well, since there is so much melting down of old structures that's happening and mirrors what as often we go through as well, since we're all part of that process. So again, you can find the whole program laid out at divinemeltdowncourse.com, divinemeltdowncourse.com. So a little bit more about it. So you get not only 7 90-minute live sessions with Mirabai, it's going to include interaction time, Q&A time. You're also going to get recordings, both video and audio, from every session, as well as word-for-word transcripts. Really, all of that gives you a chance to go back and mine the gold from different things that have already been shared, and you can add it to your library for years to come. There's some small group time to connect with other participants in really heartfelt and illuminating ways. There's a Facebook community, as well as weekly exercises. On the page, you'll also see at divinemeltdowncourse.com, you're going to see a number of extra bonuses as well. There's a dialogue with Mirabai and Valerie Cheney called This Being Human. There's one with our own shift staffer, Nadira Adeya, called Wild Embodiment. That's a fun title. You want to share a little bit more about Wild Embodiment?
Well, Nadira is one of those hidden treasures, that she's behind the scenes at the Shift Network, and she's just such a wise woman. And we share this deep love of embodied spirituality, that our sensuality, our humanity on every level as physical beings is a portal to deep aliveness and also equanimity and peace.
Love it. And I always find she's also super funny too. So she has wisdom with humor is a great combo. There's also a dialogue with Mirabai and Father Bill called Moving Inward, Not Upward. And we have some special bonuses that you get when you sign up right away. And last year we did a Global Mystic Summit with Mirabai, which was one of our best received summits ever. The quality of the depth of engagement and the mystical conversations, she really gave it an extraordinary amount of attention to have this flowering of mystical wisdom from so many different directions. And on the page there, you can see different videos from that Mystic Summit that Mirabai hosted and dialogued with. Mirabai, you want to share about a couple of those that you found particularly illuminating?
Well, I'm not bragging, but I gotta say, I am friends with most of the people I interviewed. I have this wonderful blessing in my life of having these deep mystical friendships with some just incredible people, known and unknown. And so every one of the dialogues in that Mystic Summit last year, which was really one of the highlights of my life, was hosting that summit, were intimate and personal. So I really drew out of all of these people some kind of vulnerable story, because I find that it is in the midst, in the center of our humanity, that our true spiritual connection flowers. And so I interviewed people like Father Greg Boyle, who created Homeboy Industries, talked about what it was like to bury, hundreds of gang members over his 40-year career in East LA. There were many conversations like that were so human and so spiritually alive, that when we hear conversations like that, it awakens something in us. We're not just voyeurs listening in on other people's dialogue. It knocks on the doors of our hearts, and they open.
Well, thank you for that profound service, and it's a blessing to have the ones that touched you most deeply in this package that people get when they sign up by midnight tonight. There's more detail on the page at divinemeltdowncourse.com. So we've kept this whole journey an amazing program and blessing really accessible. It's just 3 payments of $109, or you save 10% when you pay in full with 1 payment of $297. The course is going to start September 22nd, run Thursdays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings and the transcripts and the community as well. And finally, I would just encourage you to go to the page at divinemeltdowncourse.com and not only read through the course outline, but also read through the testimonials of just the profound impact that Mirabai's teachings and example and sharings and encouragement have had in people's lives. She's taught many programs for Shift, and people always come away with a deep love for her as a sister, as a guide, as a way shower, and a real sense of community gets created around her teachings as well. So you're in very, very good hands, very loving hands, very warm and wise hands, and you will emerge more whole and more fully integrated with all of yourself and more able to be the everyday mystic you're here to be. So again, all the details are at divinemeltdowncourse.com, divinemeltdowncourse.com, and you get those extra bonuses from the Global Mystic Summit when you sign up by midnight tonight. So Mirabai, we just have a couple of minutes left. Anything still on your heart you want to share with folks who are considering going further with you into the Divine Meltdown Course?
Well, even though I can't guarantee that you're going to feel like a mystic going forward, I hope you will. I hope you already do, and that you will even more. What I do want to offer with all my heart right now is a space of refuge in this world that is so fraught right now, that at the very least, we will be able to take refuge together in a warm, nourishing, safe space for those few hours each week. That's what I want to give. Just a rock in the tumultuous stream of this life that you can climb up on and take a breath.
Oh, I love that. Very poetic invitation and that refuge that we can all take from some of the challenges of life and figure out how to navigate them with more grace and more surrender. So thank you again for today's wisdom, Mirabai, and just for your example of embracing the difficult transformations of life and coming out with even expanded ability to touch and move and serve others. So thank you for that. And thank you for the Divine Meltdown Course, which I know is going to be a blessing in so many lives. So again, everyone, go to divinemeltdowncourse.com. 7-week journey, and you get those bonuses from the Global Mystic Summit when you sign up by midnight tonight. So thank you, Mirabai, and thank you all. Many blessings.
Thank you.